It is my honor and pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. And since I already heard her in first service, I can't wait to hear her again. Reverend Sally Robbins is an ordained minister for Centers for Spiritual Living. She has been a minister since 1998. Reverend Sally came to the ministry after over 25 years in the corporate and entrepreneurial world. Her background includes extensive experience in sales and marketing, television and radio advertising, and event production. Reverend Sally wrote the Living Consciously column each month for 4 years in the Creative Thought magazine, if you subscribe to that, and has been a contributing writer to Science of Mind magazine as well. She is currently writing a book, and it's coming out within the year, so look forward to that. Reverend Sally has served at the national level at the Centers for Spiritual Living in a variety of roles and is currently serving as the co-chair of the upcoming Spiritual Living Convention, and it's going to take place in Salt Lake City next February. I'm sure we will have information, registration forms here for that, so hopefully some of you can go and attend that. Reverend Sally, before we give her a big round of applause, I'd like you to come up on the stage, please, because we're just going to love on you a little bit first. So, just what we did with our new guests, we rub our hands together and send out love to this beautiful being. Repeat after me. Reverend Sally.
Reverend Sally.
We are open to your divine words of wisdom. We thank you for what you do on this planet Earth.
We thank you for what you do on this planet Earth.
We are grateful you're with us today.
We are grateful you're with us today.
We love you and we bless you.
We love you and we bless you.
Reverend Sally Robbins.
Wow. You know, we had the gong wash. That was a love wash that I just got. That was fantastic. Well, I'd like you to turn to your neighbor and say, I'm ready for my awakening now. So now that you have declared that and put that into your intention to receive something today that is just for you. You remember how Bob Eubanks used to say, and there will be a special prize specially just for you. There will be a special gift if you are open to receive, because I'm just the instrument up here. The musician's just the instrument. We know that something is happening at a much deeper level. But I'm going to start with a story. It's called Grandma Still Drives. Grandma's 88 years old, still drives her car. She wrote a letter to her granddaughter, and this is what she said. Dear granddaughter, the other day I went to our local Christian bookstore and saw a Honk If You Love Jesus bumper sticker. I was feeling particularly sassy because I had just come from a thrilling choir performance followed by a thunderous prayer meeting. So I bought the bumper sticker and I put it on my bumper. Boy, am I glad I did. What an uplifting experience that followed. I was stopped at a red light at a busy intersection, just lost in thought about God and how good God is, and I didn't notice that the light had changed. It is a good thing someone else loves Jesus, because if he hadn't talked, I never would have noticed. I found that lots of people love Jesus. While I was sitting there, the guy behind me started honking like crazy, and then he leaned out his window and screamed, "Go, go, for the love of God, go! Jesus Christ, go!" What an exuberant cheerleader he was for Jesus. Everyone started honking. I just leaned out my window and started waving and smiling at all these loving people. I even honked my horn a few times just to share in the love. There must have been a man from Florida back there, because I kept hearing him say something about a sunny beach. I saw another guy waving in a funny way with only his middle finger stuck up in the air. I asked my young teenage grandson what that meant. He said it was probably a Hawaiian good luck sign or something. Well, I've never met anyone from Hawaii, so I leaned out the window and gave him the good luck sign back. My grandson in the back seat just burst out laughing. Why, even he was enjoying this religious experience. A couple of people got so caught up in the joy of the moment that they got out of their cars and started walking towards me. I bet they wanted me to pray with them, or they wanted to ask where I went to church. But that's when I noticed the light had changed. So I grinned and I waved at all my brothers and sisters, and I drove on through the intersection. As I looked in my rearview mirror, I noticed that I was the only car that got through the intersection through that whole light. I felt kind of sad that I had to leave them and all the love that we had shared. So I slowed the car down, I leaned out the window, and I waved to all of them again one more time. Praise Jesus! Praise God for such wonderful folks. We'll write again soon. Love, Grandma. How many of you have met Grandma on the road? You might have exchanged the Hawaiian good luck symbol also. And so I tell that story because the title of my talk today is Everyone is Our Teacher, including the grandma that is still driving and completely oblivious to the what she is causing on the road. And so you and I have the opportunity to understand that there are lots of people in our lives. And would you agree there are some of them that maybe, just maybe, we're not really all that thrilled with? Or am I the only one? You might have a little resentment, a little anger towards some people. Well, one of my teachers back in ministerial training, she brought a concept to us, or to our class one day. And she said, you know, everyone in your life is a master teacher. And she actually used that term for the people who were particularly challenging in her life. And she said her most challenging master teacher was her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law who had never really taken a shine to her. And she caused a lot of grief and acrimony within the family. And Marilyn was really trying to figure out how do I still love and accept this woman who has to be in my life because she's my mother-in-law, yet not put up with the behavior that is very unloving and unkind. And she realized that she had the opportunity to rise above that which was coming at her, which was unloving behavior. I thought about that concept, and I was really grappling with it when I first heard it. I thought, how can the people that are really doing me wrong, and I really had that, they've really done me wrong. Have you ever held on to that? They've done me wrong. You're even willing to tell every person in your immediate circle how someone has done you wrong. How could that person be my master teacher? They're clearly in the wrong. And so I had the opportunity to really sit with the idea that maybe, just maybe, there was a higher calling. Maybe, just maybe, there's no such thing as a random occurrence or person in our life, and that each and every person comes into my life for a very special reason. That reason is to call forth something from me that either is a higher vibration or something that still needs to be healed. Because would you agree that sometimes when people show up in our lives, they are there and they are pushing on the button that is just like, ooh. Unfortunately, we installed the buttons. So even if that person goes out of my life, if I have not healed that within me, I get to go recreate that experience somewhere else. And so you and I have the opportunity to see, wow, I'm with a master teacher. When we get in the presence of someone who is not quite as loving as we would like, not quite as kind as we would like, not quite as compassionate as we would like. And this happens on a regular basis, doesn't it? Just even driving down the road, you could have that experience where someone cuts you off. Is there love that bubbles up from you when that happens? Or is there anger and resentment? It's our choice. It's our choice. So a few years later, I see Iyanla Van Zandt on the Oprah show. Iyanla is just a specialist when it comes to relationships. And she was talking that day about loving relationships. And a woman stood up in the audience and she said something to the effect of, I just broke up with my boyfriend. He was such a jerk to me. And Iyanla said, stop. Stop right there. Don't ever call him a jerk again. He is a loving child of God who volunteered to be in your life and call something from you to bring you to your highest good. And he is a divine child of God, as are you. And so we get to experience that now, not as a jerk, but as a loving child of God. I've never forgotten that. Because I don't know if you're like me, but I run into jerks every now and then. Do you too? Someone I would love to call and label a jerk, and all I'm doing is othering them. All I'm doing is taking them outside of the realm of someone that is deserving of my love. And that's not what we're here to do. Because here's the real secret of what I want to share with you today. It's not about them. It's about us. It is always about us. Wherever I go, there I am. And if I don't take the precious time to heal and rise above the situation with a loving, kind act, then I get to replay it again and again. I know many of us have dated or even married the same person a few times over, just in different bodies, because we hadn't quite learned that lesson yet. And so those people keep showing up in different bodies, but the same consciousness, because we haven't grown our own consciousness. You can only attract that which you are. That's the law. You can only attract that which you are. Let's say that together. You can only attract that which you are. And so if I want to find more love in my life, guess what? I get to be that love. So I was reading Alan Cohen, who's one of my favorite teachers. He was presenting a seminar in Greece, and a woman named Georgia stood up and told this story. She said, I was married to a man who was abusive and emotionally absent. After long and frustrating attempts to infuse life into my marriage, I told my husband I wanted a divorce. He refused to give it to me. So I decided that even if he didn't love me, I would love me. So I decided to give myself the love and kindness I had been seeking from him. I wrote myself a long, poetic love letter, the kind I wanted to receive from a passionate, appreciative lover. So it read something like this. Dear Georgia, you are fabulously beautiful, sexy, brilliant, and intriguing. I cannot wait to see you, hold you in my arms, and make love to you with all my heart and soul. She said that felt so good that the next day I wrote myself another love letter, and the next day after that, and the day after that, and so on for several weeks. It felt so good to receive love, even from myself. One day, my husband found one of the letters. Since it was unsigned, he assumed it was from another man. He came to me, waving the letter in his hand, and said, I can't compete with this. I'll give you your divorce. The law of attraction operates on the basis of matching energy. When Georgia did not love herself, she attracted to herself a man who could not love her. When she changed her frequency to self-love, her husband had only two choices, either to rise to that level of love or to leave. See, that's the law of attraction at work. As soon as we raise our vibration to that which is the highest vibration there is, which is love, anything competing with that either has to rise to it or leave. That's another truism. So, she literally loved herself out of a bad situation. She loved herself through a master teacher, her husband. She could have called him a jerk. She could have called him any number of things. But she decided that love was going to be the order of the day, and that was how she was going to remove that feeling of not loving herself by herself. There was another teacher named Hilda who talked about how she had a gentleman come into her class, and this gentleman was pretty upset. And he was complaining because he said, I felt like I've been ripped off by an auto mechanic. The guy charged me $500 to do something. He didn't do it. It wasn't fixed. And now he won't remedy the situation. He won't either give me the money back or make it better. He said, I had a bad feeling about this mechanic when I went to him, and I just wish I had listened to him, listened to that feeling, that gut feeling. So Hilda responded to him, if you were offered a week-long course on following your intuition, and I guaranteed you that after this course, you would be better able to hear your inner guidance and more willing to follow it, would you take this class? Oh, yeah, I'd love to take a class like that, he said. And if the tuition of the course was $500, would you pay that? Well, that'd be a bargain, he said. She said, congratulations. Consider yourself lucky. You got that lesson all in one afternoon by that mechanic. The master teachers show up in all the right times, in all the right places, to allow us to see, oh, I wasn't listening to my intuition. That was a breakthrough for him, to know that he had had that feeling and ignored it. Because how many times have we done that? And we ignore that, and then we go, oh, I should have listened. These are the breakthrough moments that we get to have, simply because the master teachers show up. Now, we can label it something else, but the truth of it is that we are always, always being lovingly supported by our universe in so many wonderful ways. It may not look like a loving support. It may even look like pain and feel like pain. But that's our way of moving into a place. Sometimes pain is what it takes to move us out of a really difficult situation, or to have the blinders fall from our eyes and see, this isn't what I want. And isn't the information, this is not what I want, as valuable as this is what I want? Sometimes we have to have that first, don't we? This isn't what I signed up for. And now I get to choose again. So you and I have the wonderful opportunity every time someone comes into our lives and it's not like we wanted, we get to say, wait a minute, what's the master teacher here teaching me? Catherine Ponder, who is a fantastic unity minister, retired now. Many of you have probably read many of her books. I see many of them out on for sale in your bookstore. And her background as a unity minister was she was called on many times over the years to help pray with people. She was approached in the 1950s in Birmingham, Alabama, where she was serving at a church. And what was happening at that time was the AMA, the American Medical Association, was suing the Chiropractic Association. Because at that time, chiropractors were kind of up and coming. There weren't a whole lot of them out there. There were 40 chiropractors in the state of Alabama. And these AMA, the lawsuit that was charged by the AMA was that they were quacks, that they didn't know what they were doing, they were harming patients, and all the things it was all fear. It was all fear. And the chiropractors felt attacked. And this is the way it was. Today, chiropractic is very widespread. Back then, it was very new. And so the AMA was trying to squash it out of existence. And so they had taken them to court. There was a lot of publicity around it and lots of negative publicity around the chiropractors. So the group went to Catherine Ponder and they said, please help us. We're being attacked by this group. Now, if you say, I'm being attacked, guess what? That's just a master teacher showing up. And so she said to them, I'll pray for you, but I won't pray for you to win the lawsuit. I'll pray for the highest good for everyone involved. And so she said, we're going to gather, and I want all of us to pray. And she said, I want you to study the 27th Psalm. Jehovah is my light, strength, salvation. Whom shall I fear? And with that foundation, whom shall I fear? We're going to pray knowing the highest and best. And she said, we're going to pray for the judge. We're going to pray for the courts. We're going to pray for the AMA. We're going to pray for the Chiropractic Association. And we're going to know that the highest good is going to be what comes out of this. Well, as they did so, the negative publicity started to die down. The judge decided that it was going to move it back 6 months back on their docket. So by the time the fall rolled around, things were pretty quiet But they had remained vigilant in praying for the highest and best. And when they got to court, the judge dismissed the case. Completely dismissed it. There was no validity to it. And so the AMA did not win when it came to trying to squash the Chiropractic Association. And the chiropractors later moved into the legislature, or got the legislature to pass a law that could not happen again. And so sometimes when we see that there is something that is adversely in our lives, this is the opportunity for us to really get serious about who we are. They got to stand up and say, this is who we are. We're not ashamed of being chiropractors. We're offering good to people. And so sometimes those people in our lives allow us to stand in the truth of who we are, to say yes to the power and the grace that flows through us, not get shut down by negativity and not shut down by resentment and anger. That stops the flow of our good. So you and I can learn from Catherine Ponder and how we can stand in the truth of who we are. I was watching television this week. I love how stories just come to me. And apparently this story is all over Facebook. It's a Michigan woman who she's recently had a child. So she's got a toddler at home. She's got a young baby at home, sleep deprived. And she went to a local coffee shop to get some of the donut holes so that her baby her baby was teething on them, and to get a cup of coffee for her and her sleep-deprived husband. So she's standing in line, waiting to place her order, and there were two women behind her, and they were two older women, and she said she kept hearing them because they were clearly speaking where she could hear them, and they were saying, "Oh, look at her. Look at her. Look at what she's wearing." It's just, and they were trying to shame her. Look at her hair. It's unkempt. Look at the roots they're showing. How could she even go out in public like that? And then they said, "I can't believe this whale is in here." And they called her a whale. Now, they did not know that this woman had just recently, just before having the baby, lost 170 pounds. And when I saw her on TV, I thought, how could they call her a whale? She looked pretty normal, like just having had a baby. But they were shaming her. They were trying to shame her. Well, this was hitting her close to home. Wouldn't it hit you close to home if you heard things like that said about you? And so she gets up to the cashier, and she says, "I want the donut holes and the 2 cups of coffee." And then they went, "Oh, well, I guess the whale's going to go back in the ocean now and eat her donut holes." And at that point, she started to cry. She said, "I just couldn't hold back the tears. It was just too much for me." And so she paid for her things, and just before she walked away, she never looked back at the women, but she thought, you know what, I can handle this differently. And so she said to the cashier, just as she was about to turn away, "I want to pay for their coffee." And the cashier had heard all of this and said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yeah, I'd like to pay for their coffee." And so she did. And then she walked away. Never saw this woman again. And she was saying to the reporter, "I want, and I try to teach my children this, I want to be that kind of person that pays it forward. I want, even if someone is not treating me the way I want to be treated, I want to be able to give love back." That's our lesson today, is how can we stand in the midst of unkindness, and what it really is unskilled behavior. That's the way I've learned to term it. People just aren't skilled at loving sometimes. And when unskilled behavior shows up in our life, we can still be the loving one. We can still be the one that says, "I'm still going to stand for love. Let me pay for your coffee." That woman probably that was more sermons than any minister has ever given. She lived the truth of what we teach. And when you do that, that's really the essence, isn't it? Because religious science is not something you come and you hear and, "Oh, isn't that nice?" And you kind of cogitate about it for a while. This is a practice. This is a solid, everyday practice. And working on your consciousness is a full-time job, my friends. It is not a part-time, well, I'll do that when it's convenient. This is something that allows you to integrate what you hear here, what you hear in your classes, and what you learn from each other, and then practice in your life on a daily basis. It's not where you come and look pretty and have a cup of coffee. That's a wonderful part of being the social aspect of church. The best way I can describe this is your minister, Reverend Michelle, is one of the best examples I know of walking her talk. Would you agree? She walks her talk. And that's what makes her a great minister, not just a good minister. She's a great minister. She's not only good at running the business of a church and a great speaker and a great teacher, she walks her talk. And that, by example, is showing all of us. That's what we as ministers take on. I'm willing to do this, and I'm willing to commit to this, to live to the highest that I possibly can. I'm not perfect, nor is Reverend Michelle, but we do our best every day to show up as the love and light that we are. And that's what a master teacher does. It allows us to see where we might be falling a little short in loving each other and loving. So the bottom line here is, can we keep our heart open in the midst of unskilled and unloving behavior? Could you keep your heart open when someone was calling you a whale? That would be tough. That would be tough. But Ernest Holmes said this. He said, light the candle of love, human kindness, forgiveness, and understanding in your own soul, and let it shine brilliantly. Remain steadfast in the radiance of that spiritual light of truth within you. And sometimes people that we don't even know are our master teachers. Marcia Gay Harden, who is a wonderful actress, I'm sure you've heard of her, award-winning actress. She, many years ago, told the story of how she moved to New York City to start her acting career. And so she showed up, she gets off the bus, she's got her suitcase, she's like, I'm going to set the world on fire. She said, I really remembered how I was just like so gung-ho, I'm going to be an actor. And so 4 months later, she was in a temp job. She had no acting job. She was going every morning to the Actors Equity and signing up and doing auditions and doing whatever she could, but nothing was coming through. She said that winter was the worst winter. They had so much snow in New York City. She didn't have the proper snow boots, and so she was wearing sneakers. And so she'd go out in the slush and the cold, and her feet would get wet. And so finally one day, in this cold, dreary winter, she just had it. She had had it. She said, enough. I've been here for months, nothing's happening. And she started to cry. And she said, it wasn't one of those little cries. It was one of those big, ugly cries. And she said, here I am walking down Broadway, and I'm having this ugly cry, and I'm sobbing. And as I'm standing there, so forlorn and sobbing, she said, snot was dripping out of my nose. It was terrible. And she said, this gentleman walked up to her, and he appeared to be a homeless man. And he said to her, what you crying for, baby? And that got her attention, and so they walked to the side of the street and continued the conversation. And she said, I have a cold, and I hardly have any money, and my feet are wet, and I want to be an actress, and nobody's casting me. And he said, you got a job, lady? Yes. You got a home, lady? Yes. You got a family that loves you? Yes. Then quit your crying, he said, and go back to work. And she said, he didn't say it to be mean. He was simply there to remind her of the power that she had and to be grateful for what she had in her life. She said that was the turning point. That was the point where she stopped feeling pitiful about herself and having a pity party, and she decided right then and there that she was going to take this on. And that she did have the power to move through more auditions and more casting calls. And she was going to do whatever it took. And years later, we see the fruits of her labor. And she said students will come to her and they'll say, well, you just don't know what it's like. Because they thought she just walked off of a bus and got a Broadway gig. And she said, no, trust me. I've been there. And I pulled myself out of it. because I had a master teacher that I didn't even know walk into my life. And he reminded me of who I was. And that gift was so precious to me, and it still is. I had my own angel, so to speak, show up. And I was sitting in the audience back when I was in ministerial training back in the 90s. I knew that I had to be an excellent speaker, that was one of the things that I needed to, a skill that I had to have. And I was pretty good, but I needed to go to that next level. So I was in Toastmasters. I was in the National Speakers Association. And I was really honing my craft. And I went to the National Speakers Association National Convention, 1995, and they had Les Brown. They had Harvey McKay, who was huge at that time with Swim with the Sharks. And they had all these named people who were, it was mind-blowing to sit back and watch these people work. And I remember vividly, we were sitting at the luncheon, one of the last days of the conference. We're all sitting at round tables, and we've had our lunch. And I'm looking around, and I'm saying, oh, I know that guy over there. She's really good. Oh. And I'm kind of looking around the room. And the person who was sitting next to me, to this day, if you held a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you what she looked like. But I remember her name. Her name was Maya, M-A-Y-A, which means coming from the dream. And Maya said to me, I know what you're thinking. And I thought, oh my God, can she tell that I'm totally intimidated by all of this? And she could tell. She said, I bet you're thinking, wow, I can never speak like them. And she said, you know what? I had the same feeling. And I had to understand that there was something within me that only I could express. There is a story within me that only I can tell. There's a talk within me that only I can bring forth to this world. And she said the same thing is for you. So don't think about who they are or how you need to emulate them. Just be you. And that will be enough. And in that moment, that was my aha moment. And I thought, now I get to stand in the power of Sally. Because, that little voice that comes out and says, well, who do you think you are? All these wonderful speakers out here, what could you ever add to this? And I got to stand in my power and say, I am Reverend Sally Robbins. And I have something to say. So do you. You have a gift that only you can bring to this world. And you get to actualize it through the power of you being you. And only you can do that. And so you have master teachers around you who may be saying, who do you think you are? What do you think you're going to be doing with that? They're there simply to actualize, to activate the power that is within you that says, I am that which I am. Just like Dawn was saying in her song, I am that which is. I am, the two most powerful words in the English language. You get to fill in the blank after that. I am a speaker. I am a writer. I am a mother. I am whatever you want to put after that. You get to say it. And your master teachers are simply there to help you move to that place of deep understanding that no other person could get you there in the twinkling of an eye like that. It's a choice. It's an absolute choice. I'm going to finish with a story. I think you've probably all heard this story, but it's so fitting for this end because it reminds us of how we need to be treating each other. There was a man who lived in a village, and he had lots of troubles. His troubles were just legendary. And he had heard about a holy man who lived all the way up on top of this mountain. He lived in this remote house, all the way up on the top of the mountain. And he thought, if I could just get to see the holy man, I can tell the holy man what my problems are, and he'll have the answer. And so he made the trek across the prairie. He climbed the mountain. It was an arduous trip. It took him days to get there. He finally gets to the house. He knocks on this simple house's door. And the door is opened by a man who looked like, it gave the appearance of someone who was a servant. And he said, please come in. So the man walked into the house. And he said, I'm here to see the holy man. I need to speak to the holy man. And the gentleman said, right this way. And he led him back into the house. Now the man was eagerly looking around the house. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get to see the holy man. I'm going to get to speak with the holy man. He'll have the answer. He'll know what to do. And before he knew it, he was at the back door of the house. And the gentleman opened up the back door and he was being ushered out the back. And he said, wait a minute. I'm here to see the holy man. And the gentleman said to him, you've already met him. The holy man is in every man, every woman that you meet. And when you treat them as the holy man in the midst of all that you are going through, then that's the answer to your problems right there. You'll never have a problem again. And so I leave that with you today. Can we treat each other as if each other was the holy man or the holy woman? That there is a spark of divinity within each of us that is so precious and that we can learn from. And that I get to have the opportunity every time a master teacher comes into my life. The challenge and even the pain of it sometimes can lift me to a place that will be so healing. So let's take that into prayer right now. Let's just take a deep breath in. And as we let it out, we are opening ourselves to this bigger idea that there is something calling us to a greater good. And it might be showing up in the form of a master teacher in our life. It might be someone that we've been harboring anger and resentment at for years. And in this moment, I know that we can choose to drop that anger and resentment. And we can move to a place of deep and abiding love and acceptance of that person for exactly who they are. They might be unskilled or even unloving. And yet we can love them knowing that they are indeed the holy man or holy woman in our life. And so we can break the chains that have been binding us for years and let go from this bondage that says, I have to other them. They did me wrong. We let go of that familiar old refrain and move to a new place of understanding that says, I love you. Thank you. Thank you for the deep lesson you have shared with me. I know that I can now move on with a higher understanding of who I am as a divine being, knowing that you too are that divine essence, that soul essence of love. And so I know that every person who has volunteered to come into our lives and show up as a master teacher, we can now release them from the chains that we have bound them in and let them go and become free to choose to love again, free to choose to love at a higher level than we've ever loved before. And so I know and accept that each and every individual in this room, each and every person watching this video, each and every person listening to a CD afterwards is getting the essence, the truth of their being right now. It's going to their very core. Because we know that love is the ultimate vibration. And so we live from this vibration from this moment on, choosing one moment after the other to live from this space. And so I know that each and every person here is now accepting these words and saying yes to a greater idea that is coming through them. Yes to birthing something that is so powerful, some gift that they are giving back to the world. That anger and resentment are holding them back and keeping them small, and they're now saying yes to living large and saying, I am here to be the son and daughter of God that I am meant to be. And so I let these words go, and knowing that as I have declared them into law, I give great thanks for the law that moves in the direction that we direct it. And I know for each and every person here, something has shifted, something has moved. Consciousness has grown, because we know that when one boat rises, all boats rise with it. And so this group consciousness has now risen to a whole new place of love and kindness and compassion and acceptance. I bless our time together this morning. I let it be so. And together we say, and so it is.